which I find so fascinating. I hear that Hogan is finishing up there soon. Your timing couldn't be more perfect. And you've revealed this years ago here on Something to Wrestle, that at some point in late 97, Hogan had reached out and talked about, hey, what if I was to come back? And I believe, if I have my timing correct here, scheduled almost like a very public dinner with Vince McMahon, with the hopes that it would get out that Hogan had dinner with Vince, and maybe he could go back and use that as leverage to get WCW up. And perhaps Vince knew that that was what the plan was, and he went along with it. But there was also some, hey, what if he comes back? Was there any consideration? What if we can get out of this Brett deal and he winds up going to WCW, and we make some of these other cuts and we change our in your house format and increase some revenues, and we up our ticket price, all the things you're going to do anyway that ultimately allow you to pay Mike Tyson. But what if we applied some of the savings from Brett and some of the newfound revenue with these other changes, and we get the guy who sort of got us here, Hulk Hogan, back on the squad?
We had talked about it. We talked about it extensively. We looked at what that would cost and what all that would entail. I don't think that Hulk was enamored with coming back to the Northeast and living in the Northeast permanently either. But the reality of the situation by this point in the game was that we need to make do with what we have. We need to tighten up what we have, and it's either going to, be make or break. So yeah, Hogan was, but that wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret on our end, and it wasn't really it was the worst kept secret in the business, I guess you could say, because Hulk let it be known that, hey, I'm coming up, my time's coming up. It made Hulk more valuable by doing that. And it was a smart business move on his part, because it truly was his contract coming up. So WCW now, if everybody else knows, well, shit, if there's interest there, then we're going to have to up our price. So yeah, that was all real. So it was an opportunity for Brett to, maybe if WCW was looking at, well, if Hulk leaves, we could have Brett, and that opened a door for Brett that normally wouldn't have been as wide open.
Two things. One, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but as hot as this anti-American angle is for the WWF, everyone would have to admit that Hogan as a heel was drawing more money and bigger ratings on the other channel. Did Vince at that point feel like Hogan was still a notch above Brett as far as a draw and someone on the roster? Not in ring. I'm not being silly with that. I just mean as an attraction.
As an attraction, I think that Hulk, without a doubt, has always been viewed in that way. No question about it. So, but at the same time, the comparison, and could we replicate that with the WWE audience? You got to remember, and it was two different audiences in a lot of respects, a portion of it. But the WWE audience, when we eventually did bring Hulk in as a heel, they didn't want Hulk as a heel. They wanted their red and yellow Hulk Hogan. It had been enough time by that point that those that had seen him as a heel in WCW, but those that wanted him in the WWE, they wanted their red and yellow. They wanted their hero. So Vince always looked at Hulk as that Babe Ruth and as that, that hero that will always be here and the guy that you could always believe in. So I don't know. I don't know that. I know that was our pitch. I mean, that was my pitch to bring Hulk in as a heel because he had never been one here before. And I think that, I think it would have done well, but you could have, I also thought that when the NWO came in, that Hulk as a heel would have done better than he did. And the audience didn't want to see that Hulk. So I don't know. I don't know if they would have shit on it or not. I think they would have bought him as a heel at that time. And I think that he could have helped because he had been gone long enough by that point.
Well, Bruce, let's go down the rabbit hole here for a minute. Let's say you had brought him over. You guys sort of freestyled ideas a little bit. What would WrestleMania 14 have looked like?
Well, could have been Hogan and Austin.
Man, can you imagine Stone Cold Steve Austin, the white meat baby face? Well, not white meat, but the white hot baby face against the super hated Hulk Hogan. That would have been something else, man.
Yeah, it really would have been. I think that I think it would have done some astounding business.
Well, Brett would say later that, you know, fans are emptying out of the building, production's packing everything up, they're breaking down the ring. You're in a limo ride back to Connecticut or whatever the fuck with Vince. Do you say, how'd it go with Brett?
I think I did. I don't believe I even had that conversation with him till the next day. And we didn't know. You know, he got to tell Brett what he needed to tell him. Then he had to go out and do the show. And he didn't really get much further than that. So he had given Brett permission to go and find out what's on the other side. And now the ball was in Brett's court and we just had to wait.
Two things.
So that's where the frustration comes from.
Two things I want to ask here about the Brett thing. Did Vince, how long prior to this meeting, because we should mention, as we said earlier, just as a reminder, 2 days prior to this, you guys are doing a pay-per-view in the UK. How far in advance did Vince know he needed to have this conversation and he needed to just sort of pull the Band-Aid off?
I want to say he probably came to that decision over the weekend. It had been weighing on him. It had been weighing on all of us for quite some time. But things like, big things like that, a lot of times Vince will just think it through and go do it.
Let me ask, when you said it had been weighing on us for a long time, was it a situation where, like, when you guys were just discussing sort of the financials of the company and just the overall health and maybe, hey, where can we cut some costs? Where can we increase some revenues? Does it always just sort of come back to, and then we got this goddamn Brett contract, but it is what it is? No,
it really didn't. It came back to, at least for us on our part, it came back to, where else do you cut? What else do you do? Which is, it's funny because the complete opposite, it was the complete opposite for me in TNA, where the first thing I wanted to do was cut all the big contracts.
Right.
So, and I got that pretty much from Vince's philosophy and how he handled the Brett thing, because it was, look, we can cut a lot of little things. That's not going to help us. And we did not, at least I didn't. I don't know if anybody else did, but we didn't look there. We did do what ifs with what if we got Hogan? What if we got this? What if we did that? And it all came back down to, we need to have cash flow. We need to be moving the needle. And that was Vince's decision. And that was something that he did. And we're like, okay, great. We're good to go.
Did you feel like internally, since you sort of knew the strategy, or not the strategy, but there was a possibility internally, were some people looking at this almost like this conversation with Brett? This could be like phase one, and it's not really, but almost like a trade of Brett to WCW, Hogan back to us.
No, not at that time. No, I think it was, let's cut and let's make do with what we have. We were basically told, make do with what you have.
It's just fascinating to me when you said, when the rating comes in the next day, it's not necessarily that we're just going to focus on us. It's frustration, because I think my brain would go to, what do they have that we don't have? And if they're hot angle, if they're hot act, it's Hulk Hogan and his contract's coming up, and we might could afford him if we made some of these cuts and then let Brett go, it sure does feel like a trade. And what a monumental day this is in wrestling history, because we've talked about everything that's happening here on the WWF side, but I don't even know that you know this. Do you know what was significant that happened on Nitro that night?
No.
The debut of Bill Goldberg. It's his first match. What a when you look back, man, September 22nd, dude, such a big night. And as a reminder, they're fresh off of, the NWO and well, Kurt specifically turning on the Horsemen, and the NWO giving the big beat down at the War Games. So Hogan comes out on this Nitro wearing Flair's robe. Just a pretty significant night in wrestling history. And obviously they had the better story to tell, 3.69 rating to Raw's 2.33. But all these years later, people aren't talking about what was on that channel. They're talking about here with the Stoner with Austin. So, the story that stood the test of time, easy for me to say, is Monday Night Raw. And we appreciate you guys spending time with us on this Saturday morning. We apologize it's a little late.